Mr. Amit Jain, Country Manager, NG India and COO, Renewables, AMEA, joins us on the stage. Dr. Rahul Walawalkar, President and MD, CES India and President, India Energy Storage Alliance, IESA, also on the stage, please. Mr. Kapil Maheshwari, President, New Energy, Reliance Industries Limited. May I please have you on stage? Mr. Anish Dey, Global Head, Energy, Natural Resources and Chemical, ENRC, KPMG India. May I please invite you on stage as well? And also joining us will be Mr. Rajneesh Rotria, CTO, Sterling and Wilson, Renewable Energy Limited. And to moderate this panel, I will be moderating this panel, Associate Editor and Anchor, Business Today TV. Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. Well, the biggest challenge in the global movement to 100% renewables today is how we balance supply and demand. And that is the mood challenge, really, at this point in time, how to ensure a stable, sustainable, equitable distribution of renewable energy at all hours of the year without the support of fossil fuels and also nuclear support. So let me kickstart this discussion with you, Amit, and understand from you, right at the beginning, is 100% renewable energy ecosystem even imaginable at a stage where all our panelists so far through this time have just talked about how we've just been able to manage to scratch the surface as of now?
Thanks, Sakshi. I think, renewable power, round-the-clock power, that's the topic, right? I think India, we've bid out some round-the-clock tenders, but it's not round-the-clock 100%, right? It's PLF of 80%, which says, okay, it can be oversized. It's not actually giving us power 24/7, which is the term that we use globally, which means that every kilowatt hour, every hour is a renewable power, right? So I think we're far away from that indeed. I think currently the round-the-clock power that's being bid out, it's more oversized capacities. Storage, of course, as we heard from other panelists, it's still not competitive to meet the tariff demands of the discoms. So I think there is a long way to go. There are ways like, if we see other markets, for instance, we recently at NG signed a contract with Google about a couple of years ago, in fact, where we provide them 24/7 power for every kilowatt hour that we supply to them, right? And this basically means that, we're using solar, wind, the merchant markets, which really needs to evolve in the Indian context before we can reach that stage.
Rahul, if I may ask you to add to this, what are the 3 key challenges that you see at this current stage that we need to mitigate before we reach that 100% renewable energy space?
Thank you, Sakshi. I think the biggest challenge is inertia. I think we like to just get together and talk about this and just wait for some magic to happen where the cost will come down. I think we have seen it in every industry, solar being the classic example where we started deploying solar when it was 17 rupees, and we have seen now solar reaching under 2 rupees. With storage, we are seeing the same trend happening around the globe. At the cell level, the costs have come down more than 95% in last 15 years, where around the world we are seeing a lot of projects. Unfortunately, in India, we have been just saying that, no, it is not economical. We want to wait for manufacturing to happen. Yeah. And without doing the demand side activities, manufacturing is not going to happen. So that's where the biggest challenge is. But the good news is that finally, with last 5 years of effort of India Energy Storage Alliance and Niti Aayog, we have now 50 gigawatt hour manufacturing being set up in India. And in fact, with the kind of interest which is being generated, we have now already set a vision for setting up 500 gigawatt hour manufacturing for advanced energy storage in India. And we will get there. This year, we are expecting more than 15 tenders, which are almost at few hundred to few gigawatt hour scale, including energy storage, we are all going to come out. And I think finally we are reaching a stage where we are going to go beyond the discussion and start implementing. The biggest learning, which I would say, is that as a CS, we manage more than 2 gigawatt hour of energy storage in North America as part of a 18 gigawatt portfolio. And there are a lot of optimization which you can do when you are actually operating and managing the asset. It is not going to happen just because of the capex reduction. And unless we start deploying projects, starts learning from it, we will not be able to capture that.
Right. Thank you for that take, Rahul. Mr. Maheshwari, if I could take that point forward with you. The key challenges right now that we face to transition completely to renewable space, and what are private players such as yours really contributing in a fast transition or a faster transition to that goal now?
Thanks, Shakshi. So I'll address your first point first. Second point, that how are private players doing? So private players who are large consumers of energy have at the same time very good decarbonization goal. And one of the energy transition is seen as topmost priority in every board meeting now. So if that is the kind of attention it is seeking, everybody is doing that. So the 10-year shift which we have seen in adoption of renewable is now happening, how we can get this 24/7. So that shift needs to start. And for that to start, possibly your first question was on the challenges.
Yeah.
First, you need to address the price points. So, and to address price points, we really need to figure out, is electrochemical or the battery storage the only thing? Can we look at other forms of storage as well? Because while some of the things can work for some geographies, the same things may not work for a different kind of geography or a need. So your idea should be always that how do you match your demand and supply? And once you start doing that, you will definitely be able to figure out what solution works best.
Yeah.
And especially for private clients, we would definitely look that for a particular factory at a particular location or in kind of an industry, what solution works best in order to minimize cost. And the next challenge, what you say, is technically the adoption. We really need to see that let's not talk about 100% RERTC. Let's see where do we hit 60%. Let's see where do we hit 80%. Because of course there's a limitation to which you would reach 100% RERTC. Let's take the first step forward. I think we'll be able to reach what we are all talking of, 100% round the clock renewable power as well. And for that to happen, an ecosystem needs to be built, and private players are definitely playing their role along with the government, which is coming out with the supportive policies.
Sure.
So private players have participated in PLI, and government has announced a viability gap funding for battery energy storage. So
Yeah.
all of this putting in place, I think there are ways to overcome those challenges.
Right.
as
We
well.
will speak to you more about, quantifying the kind of moves that you're taking as a private player yourself in the company. But Anish, let me just come to you for your opening thoughts as well. India right now is facing a quadrilemma, when we talk about renewable energy space, the energy access security, and then there's the affordability factor, which Mr. Maheshwari just pointed out. And then there is the sustainable provision as well. How can we, or how soon can we, mitigate all these challenges?
I mean, what's a specific point you want to talk about? Just can you elaborate on that question? What is
So
the...
basically, India is facing a quadrilemma right now.
Yeah.
We do have a challenge of security, we do have a challenge of energy access, we do have a challenge of affordability, and then a sustainable provision. So how do we really go forward? What is the pecking order we need to really go forward with to tackling each of these?
Fair point. So you see, we have to remember India's context, and it's the context is of a growth economy which is going to be continuing on a growth path for the next 20-25 years, and it's very different from the rest of the world, including from China. And at the same time, we have to decarbonize. So this is the challenge which we have, which is very different from, as I said, from the rest of the world. So if you are looking to do that, you have to draw some red lines around. And one of the first red lines to draw is that we are not going to live with energy poverty. That is a definitive red line. So subject to that, we can look at all kinds of solutions which are possible. And if I had to look at what is the way to go about it, within those red lines, I think you have to take a portfolio view. And rather than getting fixated about RTC power or whatever, you have to see what is the least cost portfolio which operates within those red lines and then delivers you the decarbonization. My summary point would be that is possible. And it is possible to get a lot of renewable energy. It's possible to get a lot of storage if you have the will, as Rahul mentioned. It is possible to get in markets. It's possible to get in transmission. It is possible to integrate all of that and deliver that low carbon, least cost power if you plan it and execute it the right way. It's a lot of hard work, but very much possible within those red lines.
Right. Rajneesh, if you could add to that as well and help us understand how a private player such as yours is going to be contributing in mitigating such challenges and achieving that 100% renewable space. What are you doing at Sterling and Wilson Group as well?
Yeah, thanks, Sakshi, and good evening all. Yeah, so I will add to the points to the challenges when, why the challenges started. See, the promotion of the renewable energy, wind and solar, has reached to some extent that it was dominating the grid. And the grid was facing particularly the load dispatch centers and the state dispatch centers for the fluctuation of the power demand. At the moment when they are getting a peak power from the industries and all, and the radiation and the wind is not in control of anybody, it's nature. So to meet that challenge, a storage device or something about the RTC word has come, and thanks to the government policies also, which now they are saying that 15% has to be there as a RPO is to be increased to 40 plus, and there will be some, the penalties also if they will be not doing. So that all will support to conquer and understand the balance of the challenges. Challenges will always be there. It was there during wind era. Yeah. It was there during the starting of the solar when we were in 2010. Like the, technological evolvement is still happening in the solar.
Yeah.
And, the changing of the module sizes, changing of the inverter. So, and it is happening in a different time space. When the module suppliers are changing something, the other ecosystem is not ready. And to meet that ecosystem, the time and, the benefit which we should get at the right moment is not there. So all these balances are required to be there, and as a EPC player, as you asked correctly, which was touched between the last panel's discussion also, the learning which we are having globally from all the projects is percolated constantly and continuously to our developers, our vendors specifically, that what exactly we want, what exactly the system and industry wants, which will be, reducing these gaps between the time-space technologies.
Okay. Amit, how did you look at the announcements in the budget 2023 in terms of providing enough to the renewable energy ecosystem? Is enough being done at the center level, at the state level, or much more needs to be done now?
I think in the budget, indeed, I think there was a thrust for renewables. I think the finance minister did mention on the renewable side that it's a thrust area, especially linked to hydrogen. But I think beyond that, there are a lot of policy matters that are being undertaken by the government, right? I think the government, as was said, that the RPO obligation for each state is being made mandatory. Financial support to the DISCOMs have been provided. The transmission infrastructure is being improved. All the bottlenecks that are there, I think the government is addressing that. It's aware of the bottlenecks, is addressing that indeed. So I think it's the move in the right direction. I think with now corporates also moving towards that. I think merchant markets also being more buoyant. I think we can definitely push this in the future. Huh?
Okay. Rahul, storage has emerged so many times throughout the course of discussions. Perhaps it's a major concern right there. From your own sector, what is the bigger ask right now, if not achieved as of yet from the government side?
So on storage side, we are very happy, especially if you talk about budget. Many of the industry requests have been accepted by the finance ministry. One was the viability gap funding for 4 gigawatt hour of storage, which would help many of these projects I talked about, which are coming up this year. There was also immediate reduction for import duties for cells, which can be used for possibly both batteries as well as electric vehicles. There is one more thing, which is, I think, rationalization of GST, which is a big pending ask, because many times we keep on talking about, we want cost of storage to reduce by 30%. But right now, actually, if you are doing a brand new BSS project, you are ultimately paying almost 40 to 43% in duties and taxes.
Yeah.
So that's something which, especially for next 2 years, 3 years, if we can provide some relief on that, that will achieve the immediate reduction, and the demand will support manufacturing, because we are going to see a lot of manufacturing being set up, and most of the manufacturing facility which is happening in terms of gigafactories will be able to serve both stationary as well as e-mobility. But right now the demand generation on e-mobility is happening at much faster pace. That's where maybe the expectation is in the first set of gigafactories will be mainly catering to the e-mobility sector.
Yeah.
So now we are also expecting Ministry of Power to release a follow-on PLI where there is a focus on stationary energy storage.
Well, we will hear from the minister very, very shortly on that,
Yes.
and you can ask that question directly to him too. But Kapil, to you, I wanted to understand anything more that you require from the policy side, from the government side at this point in time to ensure a faster, sustainable transition?
See, I believe when things needs to happen, the marketplace will play its role. You know, you always cannot go back to the government in terms of asking for too many things.
Yeah.
Because they also have their own limitation. The only thing what I feel, we have been taking steps, and steps are all in the forward direction, is, possibly the certainty on policies. So, let's not have a goalpost which is sometime moving
Yeah.
back and forth. If that also can happen, possibly, that will give a greater confidence to investors that even if I'm, possibly, because these are capital intensive projects. So
Yeah.
even if I'm making lower returns, these are certain returns. And not going to reduce even further as time passes.
Okay, so PLI or any other incentives that you'll be looking at from the
So,
government
we
side?
have participated as Reliance in both the PLIs which the government has announced, and possibly the second phase of solar PLI which is coming also. So, we won the PLI for ACC PLI, battery storage as well as in the solar. So yes, that's a step which is in the positive direction.
Right. Kapil, Anish, if I can come to you, that, fiscal policy or political support, what is the need of the hour right now if we want to ensure this transition?
Actually, more the political support, and of course you need both. And as Rahul mentioned, there is a lot of disconnects in fiscal policy, which we see happening all the time, and there's no consistency necessarily. It's also not aligned to the growth requirement of the industry. So if we are looking at doing 40 gigawatt and instead doing 14 gigawatt, that gap has to be bridged by fiscal policy, not just the PLI kind, but actually consistent policies on BCD, on the the other duties which Rahul mentioned on GST. There's such a big disconnect between various components. So I think there is a little bit of hard work. So I mean, while it's usual to speak good about the things which are done, and we should, but I think there is a lot to be done as well. But the bigger worry which I have is on the political support at the state level rather than at the national level. Now, it's not that the states don't support it. You speak to them individually, they support it. But what happens is that their priorities become very different. They are not always well-funded to let go of a lot of things. So the wheeling, banking, everything costs them money. Okay, and the moment the renewables become more and more, it is going to cost them more money. So if you have to bring them along, you have to give them the carrot as well for that, which I didn't see enough of. And you have to carry them along. You have to have that dialogue, which I would like to see a lot more of.
Okay. Rajneesh, what about you? GST, PLI, anything else that is on top of your radar when you would want to ask for policy intervention from the government even now?
Yeah, from the policy perspective, the manufacturing is one thing which is talked about, the in-house and IGBT and all this semiconductor was discussed. In the same way, the manufacturing of the components in India, and mostly the right mix of the RTC, when there are tenders and there are things which is mostly is very vague on account of that what should be the mix of the technologies from the RTC perspective.
Yeah.
So the best possible optimized cost to the power, which is the average power of the RTC was discussed in the one of the session, will come when we will be doing, there are softwares and there are things which is worked upon, that what percentage of solar, what percentage of wind, what percentage of hydro,
Yeah.
and without thermal none of the renewables can work. That is a fact. So, and this was also talked about, that if you will be investing all these combinations, and thermal will be reaching to such a point
Sure.
that it will be not viable, and the thermal power plant owners will say, no, we are not interested to support. And at that moment of time, these policies are required to be made, that what right mix of the technology is needed. And then only the developers and the EPC contractors will work upon to meet, and this will be the path forward for meeting the cost objectives.
Right, absolutely. Anish, I wanted to understand from you, you must have done some studies independently as well. When we talk about, 100% goal of renewable energy, round the clock renewable energy going forward from here, 2070 as the net zero target as well. I was reading somewhere there's a $90 trillion kind of an investment globally that we will have to incur. That is currently the size of the global GDP as well. So, where is the money going to come from and how the financing is going to really take place for all of that?
See, I mean, it might be the global GDP, but that money will come over a period of time. And our experience has been that you find the money when the money finds a way to come back to the investor. So there is not such a big challenge in my assessment. The issue is that whether it's going to get the right returns, it's going to get the right risk coverage, and then you will see that money come in. But I do want to make a comment on, because your theme is around 100% RE, and also you started the question with that. To me, it's a little bit of a false goal.
Yeah.
It's a wrong motto. It's a wrong goal to start. What you want is rapid decarbonization, and that RE is a means to that. It need not be 100% RE. It sets things wrong way and increases the costs. You could well be happy with 80% and look at the other means of decarbonizing to reduce the cost faster. So while it was okay to start with 100% RE as the slogan, I think we need to get off slogans and get to actual practical realities of what delivers decarbonization at the least cost, including the least capex.
Yeah.
The money can be found.
Okay. Yeah, Rahul.
So I completely agree with Anish. I think we could have done, like, for example, with renewables, we did not start straight away with the 100 gigawatt goal, right? We started initially with a national mission with 20 gigawatt goal, and we provided a clear roadmap to the industry, which gave industry confidence to invest in capacities and capabilities. Same thing is required with even trying to make renewables more dispatchable. I think before we get to 100% RE, we need to start looking at how we can improve the flexibility of renewables, and their energy storage should have been actually playing a role for last 5 years. We have lots of wasted opportunities where we could have started with just maybe 10% of the energy which is being generated by renewables stored, and that could have helped in deviation settlement mechanism and many of the other things. But instead of that, we have been waiting about, every time we talk about, if you store solar, then it goes to 10 rupees or 11 rupees.
Yeah.
But that's not the requirement. If you are storing 10%, then maybe the incremental cost is going to be 50 paise.
Yeah.
Now, when we are already seeing different tenders going from 2 rupees to 3 rupees, is 50 paise adder which cannot be absorbed. And as the deployment starts happening, as we start optimizing these assets more, we can keep on going 20, 25, 50% very easily. And that itself will help a lot, because we do not have a demand which is a completely flat 24/7, right? So there
Very
is a
important.
demand flexibility. We need to not only be talking about solutions on the generation side, we need to allow demand response or similar market mechanisms, where actually in India, we have huge amount of storage already deployed
Yeah.
on the customer side. We can actually enable that to come into it. Khurshid talked about electric vehicles.
Yes.
Electric vehicles itself, those are batteries on wheels, right? So we have huge amount of storage which is coming in. We need to make sure that the charging infrastructure which is getting built is bidirectional, so that maybe some of those storage which is on wheels can also start playing a supporting role. So a lot of innovation can be done. We don't need to keep on just waiting, but start acting.
Sure. Amit, if you could come on that as well, how the green energy solutions are really, looking at supply side interventions, at the same time driving the demand for clean energy at this point.
Just to pick on Rahul's
Yeah.
point, right? I think, the storage in India that we is looking at is only basically for peak shifting, right? But globally, we see other business models for storage to make storage viable, right? I mean, we see, negative pricing on grid support and voltage support. That makes storage affordable, even with the current prices of batteries that we have in the market, right? So so these are the models, interventions that will happen. Of course, there has to be adoption. There has to be, the drive to invest. I think money, coming back to your question, the money is out there. I think we are looking at India to invest in India as a market for us, one of the 30 countries that we invest in. So I think from that perspective, the money is out there. I think it's about protecting returns, as was said. I think there are several interventions or initiatives that the government is taking any which ways to do that. I think, if we can support that, if we can have policies that support the return protection of the investor, then there's money to be invested indeed.
Okay, Kapil, if I could ask you also, especially, do you believe that the supply chain weaknesses across renewables are posing as a big barrier to energy transition that we are talking about? And also, what will be the role of private sector, such as yours, in removing some of those hurdles now?
I'll take on first from what Anish said. We also need to understand, we have been talking just on the electricity side of it.
Yeah.
Now, in the whole energy transition, electricity is only 30 to 35% of the
Okay,
transition.
okay.
So so let's look at, instead of calling it more round the clock always, let's look at it, what dispatchable power you can move from one end to the other end.
Okay.
So we really need to devise our projects and policies in accordance with that. Coming to your question on the supply chain side of it,
Yeah.
you have seen an immense response on both the PLIs where government has asked a good amount of local value addition. Let me take an example of the solar PLI. So there were players who bidded for the entire value chain, which is from sand silica to ingot wafer, cell and module, whereas presently the country is only at cell and module. If you look at even the ACC PLI, which is the advanced chemistry cells, the participation was almost double the kind of size which was allotted. So for a 50 gigawatt hour, it was 108 gigawatt hours for which the bids were coming. And with the kind of attention it was giving it to the energy density, number of cycles, and the local value addition. So if everything is falling in place, it will take its own time.
Yeah.
We will face hurdles like, with geopolitical conditions like export ban happening on plant and machinery from certain countries. So while it poses challenges, it also gives an opportunity that can we develop these things on our own? It will take time.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Even others have taken time. So why are we in such a hurry that we want to do this thing as on today? But I think we have all the capabilities present in India, be it financing, be it talent, be it engineering, and be it the materials to do
Okay.
all that.
Okay.
And the willpower as well.
Sure. So I think Anish also wanted to say something, and Rahul also. So Rahul, do you want to go first? Sure. Okay.
So in terms of the supply chain, one thing again, we get many times fixated with just India manufacturing, right? One thing which is happening is what COVID has taught everyone in the world is you cannot rely on a single source
Correct.
for supply chain. And right now we are looking at, I'll talk specifics about the, say, battery manufacturing. The global battery manufacturing is right now around 1,000 gigawatt hour annual production, of which 85% is captured by China. But if you look at next 10 years, it is expected that somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 gigawatt hour of new cell manufacturing capacity is going to come in, and it is not going to come in only in China.
Yeah.
Almost half of that is going to come in outside China, and most of these countries are looking for a reliable partner in addition to China. So again, I don't want anyone to expect that suddenly all these countries are going to move away from China. I think China has done tremendous work, and we need to respect that, and we cannot get away from that. But as a India, as the India Energy Storage Alliance, last month we have set a vision where we are saying that by 2030, can we aim at being 10% supplier for the global advanced battery
Realistic
manufacturing,
goals.
and by 2035, 20%.
Sure.
That would create opportunity for almost 2,000 gigawatt hour worth of supply chain globally to be served from India.
Sure.
And I think that's the opportunity we can capture.
Sure, absolutely. Anish, I mean, like you were sort of disagreeing with what Kapil was saying, perhaps. Just clarify if that
No,
is
I
the
wasn't
thing.
disagreeing.
Okay, but I wanted to ask you, of course, you can make that point after his discussion, but I wanted to ask you that, we usually say that supply chains are only as strong as the weakest links. So we rely on imports. We also rely on the growing need for the skillful workers as well, and the domestic manufacturing capacities, which are untapped so far. But can all of this really make clean energy industry really vulnerable to, say, production shortages going forward from here, to trade disruptions, and even natural disasters?
See, that's not the only thing which will disrupt this industry. This industry will disrupt itself. So hydrogen in one form will disrupt hydrogen in another form.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to be ready for that disruption. And I think that's something which we need to recognize. I see this question in a very conventional lens. It's coming from a very conventional lens. But if I look at the innovation ecosystem which is playing out now in the last 3 years and during the COVID period, you went into COVID with certain knowledge, you came out of COVID and you see what's happening. It's a very, very different thing. So I would not be excessively worried about traditional supply chains. I would be more worried about seeing that we keep the innovation going.
Yeah.
There's a youth of the country who are doing fantastic work, and they will solve some of those supply chain problems also.
Right, Rajneesh, what are companies such as yours doing in R&D, in innovations, technological development, exploring the trade, collaboration to really have an integrated renewable energy generation, storage, distribution, all of that?
Yeah, so I will take the points from Kapil and then Anish. So basically, we are regularly, mitigating the supply chain challenges to meet the deadlines of the project and the commissioning, the time which is agreed. So basically, not only, if we talk about battery, which is a very nascent stage at the moment, but all the renewables will require the support system of BOS. And BOS components, whether it is a transformer or cable or, other, steel structures, supports or civil engineering, all this is a conversion of raw materials of steel, copper, aluminum, and cement industries and all. So converting all for generating a renewable energy, this supply chain should not be on such a pressure to meet all this demand. Shilpa already touched that the mining should not be in such a way being done, which will be, again creating a green power into a different perspective.
Okay.
So this balance, is required. I respect all the opinion from the panel members that this capability is there.
Yeah.
Definitely, we can develop, we can manufacture, but
Okay.
keeping all this in mind.
Okay, some panelists are realistic targets and some of them are absolutely ambitious and believe in the India's capacity to really mitigate the challenges right here. But Amit, let me just ask you on the cost point, which has also been discussed before on the panel, but it is important to touch upon that as well. It is one thing to say that, we are going to be achieving the net zero goals, but we do know that India is and businesses also are price sensitive at this point in time. When we talk about round the clock renewable energy as well, will it eventually become price competitive to the grid?
Again, I think what we're seeing globally, right? I mean, the RE100s, I mean, everybody is going for 24/7, have some form of target for 24/7 renewables in the near future. That's set apart. I mean, price is one side, right? I mean, they're willing to pay a premium. That's what we see in different geographies, that they're willing to pay a premium to get that 24/7 target achieved, right? So I think that's what I said. I mean, the merchant market needs to drive this 24/7 kind of story. The utility or the industry, as was said, I mean, I think it's very difficult to say that India will go 24/7 renewables because, as was said, it is a developing country. I mean, we are not going to be, we need base load, and I think any technology that we have today, at least, does not provide that. So
Absolutely.
I think the drive would come from the merchant market. I think the likes of, all the big tech companies, everybody, all the RE100s have some kind of targets for renewables.
Kapil, if you can come into that as well, what is really needed to make renewable energy price competitive with the grid going forward from here?
Nothing needed. Renewable energy is already price competitive.
It is?
Yes,
We
it
know
is.
that
Who's-
solar and wind is, but round the clock.
So from an round-the-clock perspective also, I would say what is required is let's not go in this whole dilemma of every time dollar per kilowatt hour for in battery cost. Let's look at how we can keep enhancing, because we are talking of stationary storage here, how we can keep enhancing different technologies which can play a role in terms of storage. It could be, somewhere it is the PSP which works, somewhere it is the air compression also which can work. So we can look at what long duration energy storage can make it for in dispatchable power. Batteries or the electrochemical technologies will play a key role. At the same time, can we look at chemistries which are outside our reach and bring down the cost for them so that we can start commercial scale manufacturing for that? I think industries have already started taking initial steps towards that.
Yeah.
Just an example, Reliance invested in a company, Faradian, which is sodium ion. So, taking into account that lithium reserves are not in India, what do we do if, so that's not gonna, come so suddenly. But at the same time, I would say possibly if we combine, so there is no silver bullet which comes that this
On
one
that,
technology
I want to
works.
ask you, Kapil, we did see the news flashes right this morning, 10 gigawatts being set up by Reliance Industries in UP, 75,000 crores really flowing in as investments over the next 4 years. How much of that will actually go into making renewable energy affordable for the common man out there?
So, if you talk of all the announcements, possibly, I wouldn't say only for Reliance, but all possible large conglomerates and the IPPs, the amount of power which everybody has announced and the amount of investments in the whole green sector, even if a portion of that happens, it is certainly going to help even the end consumer. Not only industries, but end consumer as well, because technically, if we keep on adding more renewable to the grid, even the distribution licensees would take that green power and then supply it to the end consumer. There is a possibility some of them themselves become an distribution licensees in the country and then start supplying that. And then there's a whole market of energy as a service. But it cannot just contain what we are seeing, that RE100 industrial players would continue to drive the market. The end consumer needs to see the benefit and would see that.
Okay, Rahul, you wanted to make a point there?
Yeah, in terms of the price competitiveness, I think many times we get fixated with these large tender prices and try to just compare that, right? If
Does
you
it
see
all boil down
commercial,
to storage capacities and innovations in that?
yeah, no, I'm saying that in terms of the commercial industrial customers, if you see, as Kapil mentioned, it is already cost effective. There is no commercial industrial customer who is paying a tariff less than 8 rupees.
Anish
As a-
disagrees.
in terms of
Okay. Oh, every time you nod your head, I feel that it is a disagreement. Okay.
Yeah. So most of the commercial industrial customers are paying tariff which is within 8 rupees to 12 rupees.
Yeah.
You can get significant amount of flexible RE, including storage, for somewhere between 6 to 7 rupees per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
So what is been required is to get the technologies available on ground, look at other solutions such as the business side of solution like financing and other thing like Kapil talked about energy as a service, and that's what has been stopping. It is not a innovation on the manufacturing level or in a lab scale. Those things will happen, those things will come up. We don't know in next 10 years, 20 years, which technology is going to dominate. Already in last 15 years of working in energy storage, I've seen more than 20 different technologies being tried to get commercialized, and many of those will continue in future as well. But we need to, again, to your other point in terms of this, all this import and other thing, I just get fascinated why we are suddenly worried about importing some of the renewable energy technology components or batteries and supply chain for that. We are talking about replacing reliance on fossil fuels, including petroleum. And we are importing 80 to 90% of the petroleum for last century.
That's true.
And we are replacing that. So if we can live with that, if we can live with price stocks where oil prices have gone from $5, $20 to above $100, and industry has survived, same thing will happen. We don't need to overreact to some of the short-term price changes which happen with some of the new technologies.
Yeah.
The trend is very solid. It is going to continue because it is not dependent on commodities. It is based on improvement in performance, improvement in overall efficiencies of the technologies, and that trend is going to continue.
Okay, Anish, I want you to come in on that. And
First is
also,
that I have to be
what Shilpa
careful
was
about
mentioning
how
in
I
the
shake my
previous
head.
panel, she clearly said one thing, that till the time you give something better, nobody's going to be adopting what there is. In terms of pricing and the other factors as well, if you could come on to that.
See, yeah. So I think, you asked about whether I was disagreeing. I was agreeing with him. And as I said, I need to control my shake of my head to convey the right message. But if I disagree with something in all of this, I actually disagree with a very rigid definition of the RE100 theme, as we have said.
Yeah.
And I just want to emphasize that because we are coming back to that question. See, it's an integrated grid. You don't put in an electron at some place and take away the same electron at another place. It's not a truck taking material from one place to another. Okay. So if it's an integrated grid, what we need to do is, for any player, find the lowest carbon way of meeting demand. And that could be 100% low carbon, but it doesn't need to be from source to sink.
Yeah.
We have a pure definition of the electricity which flows there. Okay, it could be from energy markets, it could be from renewable energy certificates, it could be from GDAM, GTAM, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of innovation which is happening. So I do want this audience to think about very deep penetration of renewables, because that's the only way to go forward on the supply side. We are not going to build coal-fired power plants anymore. That's not practically possible. It's not financeable.
Correct.
Okay, so we will build more of renewables. We need to go to 40 gigawatts without a question. But when we use that renewable, we need to use it much more inventively, much more differently than the way we are conceiving some of these solutions today. If we do that,
Yeah.
then we do get to a very affordable, low carbon solution which should meet the requirements. I'm also making this point because sometimes regulation, even coming from Europe, confuses that. So what is green steel? If you're making green steel and then you're using the grid, what they're saying that if you're using the grid,
Yeah.
then and balancing some of those requirements, even if you buy the RECs and others, then it won't
Sure.
qualify.
Sure.
So those are the kind of problems we need to solve. The policy problems, whether domestic or internationally, solve those problems and make sure that we are headed the low carbon way.
Okay, 2.5 minutes to go. Rajneesh, I will take your point there. I saw you nodding right there to make a point. But just to tell all our audiences, after 2.5 minutes, we will be opening the floor for question answer round as well before the minister really reaches us. So you can meanwhile just prepare your questions and be ready, and you can ask any one of the panelists. Meanwhile, I'll just request if the mics are there already to be passed around as well. Rajneesh.
Yeah, I will just agree on 2 points which Anish said. That it should not be like a copy paste type of thing which is some other country is doing, we can do immediately the same thing, because lot of analysis is required of the grid where the peak power is to be shaved with the energy storage. It is not that you have a bigger capacity which cannot be utilized for the entire. That word RTC is not that easy that only this much megawatt has to be supplied constantly. It has to be that peak demand has to be met. And if you have that capacity, that may not be utilized in the daytime when the demand is not there. So all this analysis and balance, I agree with Anish. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Just 1.5 minutes to go. Amit, I wanted to understand, for the common man and for the industry, of course, it will flow in from the industry and then to the common man. On adoption, what would you really tell them out there? If we can also take some votes right here. How many of you, in your homes, in your offices, many of you have businesses as well, have already inched up a little bit when it comes to adoption of renewable energy? Okay, let's talk about, say, over 50%. How many of you at your homes and businesses have already, switched to renewable energy? Over 50%, anyone? Okay, just 2 hands right there. What is the percentage? 60, 70? 60%, okay. 40%, 30%? 20%? 10%? 5%? You can see the show of hands. There is no show of hands, only I think remarkable contribution by some 2 hands, already done 60%. So, you see that lacuna really coming about. How will that adoption and the change of mindset really happen? Anish.
Well, before we go to the supply side and adoption by industry, first thing is that you're possibly asking a crowd which doesn't represent the industrial houses which are going towards that. So we need to ask the appropriate audience for that. I would ask the audience the question that how many of you in your household, not just you, but in your households, turn off the lights when you don't need it?
Okay. Let's ask the panelists first.
Yeah. I do it. My family doesn't do it.
Yeah, we do that.
And I think there's a lot of case where we misuse electricity and energy. I think that's the first sensitization which needs to happen, that conserve energy, use it judiciously. And that's what the Prime Minister also says all the time. It's a message difficult to absorb, but it is what we need to do first. Conserve the use as much as possible. Be very frugal in energy use. And when you are very frugal in energy use, you're automatically cutting down consumption. You can't save better than that.
Will the frugality increase once it is renewable? Because then you think that
There's
it
nothing
is
to do
forever
with renewables. You need frugality in the first place, cut down energy. That's the cleanest form to do.
All right. Okay, and with that, we will open the floor for question and answers. The mics are there. Maybe you can raise your hand, and then the mic will be passed around to you. Okay, that gentleman here. Please begin by saying your name and where are you from, and tell me which panelist do you want to ask your question to.
Hi, my name is Mohammad Rehan Akhtar, and I'm part of the Sterling and Wilson.
Okay.
When we have started a 1 megawatt NDPL plant in Delhi in 2010. And I was part of that NDPL plant. See, the question is not that the home. The question has to be there when you are in hotel and when you are leaving the room. How many people are there who switch off the lights?
Mindfulness when you're not paying for it. Okay. Who do you want to direct? So everybody's agreeing with your point right there. Do you have a question directed?
Mr. Anish, because he is saying that one house, I'm saying that one, how many people are there who is switching off?
He does that. I don't know if he can answer on behalf of everyone. Yeah.
And I completely agree with Anish
Okay.
Conserve it, and conservation is more than renewable.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the home because you are paying the money. But when you hotel, when you have paid the money, you think that one, oh, I have paid the money. This is the mentality of the people are there. So how many people are?
I'll answer your question in a different way. You know, yesterday I was at the India Energy Week and I was there for the last 3 days. I generally, when I leave the room, I turn the AC off also because otherwise the AC goes on forever. And I turned off the master switch. Every time I was coming to the room, I saw the light still back on. So there's something which is wrong with the instrumentation there, which doesn't make that. So why blame the user of that? There's something fundamentally wrong in the thinking.
Okay, maybe they want it that way.
I was
Yes.
telling that
Okay,
more
maybe please
automation-
have the mic passed around. This gentleman there, raising the hand. Please, sir, say your name first, from where you are, and which panelist do you want to ask your question to?
Good evening. My name is Manjeet Singh. I am from petroleum industry.
Okay.
Telling the habits about switching off the light at your home or maybe the hotel. There is a PCRA, and in PCRA, which is petroleum conservation, so conservation is very important. I think there is enough education which have been given to the industry on this subject, and I think all of the audience which is available here, they definitely come under somewhere with PCRA. Now, if I talk about my industry, let me tell you that Bharat Petroleum, Indian Oil, Indraprastha Gas, where I was working, all the CNG stations, they have put up the rooftop solar panels, and thus they are converting it to the renewable energies, using the renewable energies. Second thing is, I'm very confused with the panel that all the time they are saying that we cannot go to the 100% renewable.
Okay.
Whereas our Prime Minister is keeping a target of net zero.
Okay.
To achieve the net zero. That means he is talking about no carbon. If I understand, net zero means no carbon.
Sure.
So rather than putting up individually by the industry, respective industry who are involved with the energy sector, to keep a phase-out goals to really achieve that net zero, I think probably that is the most important thing, rather than accepting it that this is not possible.
Okay, do you
Because
want to...
all of the panelists,
All the panelists.
somewhere have were countering each other.
Okay. Kapil?
I would just, possibly not answering all what you're saying. All I'm saying is there is a difference between net zero and carbon neutrality.
Yes.
I can try and explain that, but it could take some time, so we can take it offline. But there is a difference. All I can say is that you can still emit carbon in a net zero scenario. You just try to balance it with something else.
Yeah.
So it is not saying that you don't have a right to emit in carbon, but you are trying to do something more to adjust it so that you are net zero.
Correct.
We cannot say by 2070 we will not do any activity which emit carbon. While you are brushing teeth also, the water comes, your toothpaste is made using carbon. So every possible thing, activity has a carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Restaurants have now started, forget about airlines giving a carbon footprint of the travel what you are doing. In UK, restaurants have started putting what is the carbon if you are taking this dish compared to this dish. So there is not that carbon, the awareness about what kind of GHG emission you are doing by putting in particular activity is more important also, compared to saying that we will not be emitting any carbon, which is possibly a very difficult task.
Okay, does that answer your question? All right. Any other questions? Okay. Yes, please. Please say your name, where are you from, and which panelist do you want to ask your question to?
Good evening, everyone. I am Sharif from Amplus Solar. So my question is regarding this RERTC that we are talking, renewable energy round the clock. Irrespective of the technology that is being adopted, there still exists a differential between the cost of the RTC power RE and the conventional power. So as industry champions, do you expect the government to disincentivize coal generation in the form of some carbon cess that probably is being practiced in Europe? Is it on our radar?
Okay, which panelist do you want to direct the question to?
Mr. Maheshwari.
Mr. Maheshwari. All the questions are coming to you by default.
No, it's a very, very difficult question because it's very different the way we look at it in India compared to maybe possibly you are talking of Scandinavian country which have been imposing carbon penalties to a tune of $100 to $150 also. You know, India is a growing country while, you know, and being developing country, we would see activities which continues to emit carbon, and just putting in carbon penalty, which is very huge, could, you know, could reduce the pace of our development. So I would say there's, I wouldn't say what government should do because I think they are best at doing what they know, what to be done. All I can say, at a gradual pace, we can introduce some carbon taxes and penalties so that we will see that industries and even end consumers start towards this shift towards making low carbon technology. So
Right.
that's what it is.
Rahul, you want to?
So again,
Sure.
on coal, government has already added certain cess and other thing. It is also coming in form of even transportation, where railways there is a additional money being paid, and that is subsidizing the passenger transportation. But one thing I just want to. I have been always puzzled. Like, it seems like we are waiting for these flexible renewables or RTC renewables, and when it is going to reach parity with variable renewable. That I just don't understand. Like, if you are standing and if your one leg is on fire and other is on ice, your average body temperature may be fine, but you are not going to survive, right? So for that, you do the air conditioning, you are managing all those things so that you can have the comfortable life. Same goes with grid. If you are looking at adding the renewables, even if, and again, storage is not only for renewables. One of the first projects which was done by AES Corporation with grid scale storage was in Chile, where storage was integrated with a coal plant to make coal plant operate more efficiently. So again, let's stop talking about this as if storage is only for renewables, only if we are going to 100% renewables, we need storage. I think storage is integral part of the grid we need to be using. We have been for last 12 years talking about grid frequency in India. Yeah. Recently, with some of the changes in the DSM regulations, everyone is suddenly waking up thinking that, oh, grid frequency has started fluctuating from 49.6 to 50.4. I have data for last 12 years. Every year, the grid frequency, instantaneous frequency has been fluctuating on same way. Yeah. We could have addressed that by introducing, as Amit mentioned, about ancillary services, about introducing small amount of storage, which is only 1 to 2% of the grid, and balancing that, we could have taken our grid into 21st century grid by doing that. Instead of that, we keep on talking about 100 gigawatt, 500 gigawatt, large number, and wait for something for 2050, 2070. The key thing what we need to focus is how do we start adopting technologies which are already commercial and start moving towards that 100% goal. It may take us 20 years, it may take us 50 years, but if you don't move and if you just stay at a location, definitely you are not going to go there.
Okay, thank you so much, Rahul, for adding on to that. Two more questions. Okay, three more questions. Okay, we'll try and hurry up the question. Please keep your questions short because we will be awaiting the minister anytime shortly. Yes, please.
Yeah, hello. My name is Nitin. I represent NL Green Power. My question is to Rahul. What about battery energy storage or pump hydro storage? If I am a consumer, I would bother about it. I don't care with which kind of storage it is. So what do you think the storage future of BESS versus the pump hydro storage?
No, so I completely agree with you. Again, I represent India Energy Storage Alliance, right? It is not an India Battery Storage Alliance. What we have been fighting for last 10 plus years is make sure that policies are technology agnostic and neutral, which enable all form of storage technologies, be it electrochemical, be it chemical, be it mechanical, be it thermal. So that's what we have been fighting for. So it's not that it is one or other. There are a lot of technological things where the kind of improvements which have happened with electrochemical or thermal storage, those are very hard to match with mechanical systems. Mechanical systems have some improvement on the control in flexibility. But if you start looking at trajectory and if you're looking at some of these assets which are expected to have a life of 35, 55, or 100 years, and you are seeing there is an alternate technology which may be right now slightly at a premium, but you see a clear learning curve of 10%, 12%, are you going to put in all your eggs in a technology where for next 50 years you are going to be paying based on current differential? Or are you going to be adopting a mix of technologies where in maybe 5 years, you may not need some of those technologies? That's where a lot of stranded assets get created in the grid, and we have so many examples around the world where regulators have tried to push a technology just because they felt that was the best technology at given point, but within 5-10 years, they have ended up becoming stranded assets.
Okay, Mr. Darwala, you had a question. Who do you want to speak to? Can we have the mic please passed on to him?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk about energy storage and requirement of energy storage because of renewables being pumped into the grid. At what stage do you believe it's a necessity? Is it that today, so let's say we've got about 100 odd gigawatt right now. Do you feel that if we reach 200, 300, you won't actually need, it's just good to have technology to start with on energy storage? Or have we already reached a point where it is required for the grid?
So, Khurshid, you know my views. We have discussed it maybe 4 years, 5 years back.
4 years back.
Exactly.
4 years is a long time.
So my view was 4 years back, it was required. It is, and again, it is not about moving towards 100%, right? There are things where, for example, we have, I think most of you are solar experts, you know this better than me. We are doing solar clipping. We are actually wasting 20%, 30%. In some cases, I'm hearing numbers which are even 80, 100% in terms of the clipping, where we are wasting all that energy and we are just sort of putting it in a financial structure saying that, oh, that wasted energy doesn't matter. Ultimately, one side we are talking about moving towards clean energy, and then there is a clean energy where we are investing in terms of all the solar panels, all the manufacturing, all the carbon footprint which is going into manufacturing that. And then we are wasting 20, 30, 40% of solar energy which is generated by not using it. So I think storage was required 10 years back. That's where I started, and I've seen the business case keeps on getting better and better every year. Yeah. So you can keep on moving towards more, but storage was already required 5 years back, and even right now it is required.
Okay, Anish
I'll
wants
just add
to
a
make a
little
point.
bit, Khurshid, to it. First thing is that we shouldn't see storage as a single use case. Storage is a whole range of use cases, and different technologies serve different purposes. So if you're comparing pump storage versus battery storage, for longer duration of storage, you are possibly better off with pump storage at the right cost point, whereas for shorter duration, as Rahul was saying, instantaneous things, it is possibly battery storage which is going to be better. But I also want to draw your attention to the fact that we have already storage in the form of fuel storage. So you store energy either in the form of fuel, or you produce the energy and store it in batteries or devices, okay? So storage is an inherent need of the power energy system. You just cannot avoid it. The question is that what is the low carbon storage? When you store as fuels and you burn the fuel directly, it becomes high cost, high carbon fuel. Whereas there are alternate forms, basis renewable energy, which we are going, where after the energy generation, we need the storage. And that's where this comes. This equation is changing. I just wanted to bring home the point that storage is inherent requirement, whether as fuel or as energy produced and thing, or as hydrogen, which is somewhere in between, okay, as a necessity of the energy system.
Thank you so much, Anish, and thank you, Rahul, for answering that question. I think a gentleman there was looking for the mic. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. This is Ranjit Singh. I represent Regas Engineering. My question to all the panelists, we are talking the most important point at the last part of is the energy efficiency. We know the cleanest form of energy today is nothing but the energy efficiency. So when we are talking about that, how do you feel that the solar or any renewables can achieve that maximum level of energy efficiency, number one? And number two, how this can be achieved? And how much time do you think that India can be dependent on renewable sources? Because we see now also, we are depending more on a fossil fuel kind of power when it comes to stability in terms of electricity security. So this efficiency point, when I just want to make a point that to anyone of the experts, that when we can be more efficient in terms of solar energy. Thank you.
Okay, and that question is directed to? Everybody says Kapil.
Yeah, anybody?
If I may understand your question, you are saying energy efficiency from renewables. Is that?
Yes.
So I would, possibly it's two different sides of it. Energy efficiency has nothing to do with the renewables. I would say energy efficiency is the way you would use that energy. most of the time we are talking, when we talk of energy efficiency, replacing these bulbs, etc., with LED. So to me, this looks like the very, very baby step. We really need to move as, as industry or possibly as thought leaders, that this was the first step which we would have done possibly years back. Now we really need to figure out solutions in every single aspect what we are trying to do as an industry. And seeing energy efficiency is the, possibly the minimization. And the minimization, one of the things, as Anish also mentioned, is conserve that also. So only thing what I can say is government is also trying to integrate renewable in all these measures of producing things. So all I can give as an example is the first phase of PLI was not asking for the supply to be renewable for when you are making solar panels. The next phase, it's introduced that 20% of that needs to be renewable. So it's the step in the right direction that while you are trying to promote domestic manufacturing, you are also trying to put some mandates on usage of renewable power.
Okay.
And to add
Kapil.
again, one of the reasons why
Kapil and Rahul are the chat GPT now, and they are answering all the questions on the floor. Yes, Rahul.
So one of the reasons why renewables have become cost competitive is because the efficiency at the generation level has been going up, right? So we are seeing solar panels which maybe 20 years back were below 10% efficiency in terms of converting solar energy into electricity. Now we have solar panels which are in excess of 20% or even getting to 30% in terms of the efficiency. If you talk about batteries, one of the reasons batteries have become more cost effective is not just about manufacturing scale up, which is a key part of it, but also because energy density has been improving. So earlier when I started working on energy storage back in 2004, 2005, we were looking at most of the grid scale energy storage electrochemical technologies at a energy density of somewhere around 60 to 80 watt hour per kg. So for 1 kg of materials, you could only store 60 or 80. Now we have multiple technologies which can store between 160 to almost 300 watt hour per kg. And within next 5 years, we are expecting technologies which can even cross the 300 watt hour per kg threshold and head towards 500 watt hour per kg. That means we are 5 times more efficient. It is not 5%. We are 5 times more efficient in terms of using the raw materials, which is storing the energy. And those type of improvements are happening almost year on year.
Well, thank you so much, and that's the time that we have for Q&A session. We'll wrap it up at that. Thank you very much, panelists, Rajneesh, Anish, and also Kapil, Rahul, Amit, all of you for giving some wonderful insights and answering all those questions on the floor as well. We'll be waiting for the minister. He'll be here very, very shortly. We'll take a very quick break. About 9-10 minutes is what we expect the minister to be here. Thank you so much, and continue to enjoy this evening. Warm round of applause for all our panelists. Thank you so much.